roll too. Why did you guys tell me? Oh, ladies and gentlemen, if you could, I would love for you to stand up and make some noise as we bring in the Hall of Famer, your Olympic gold medalist and hero, Thank you. Kurt, do you ever get tired of people saying you suck to you in public?
No, I actually love it.
You ever be like around someone who's not really in on the joke and they're like, why are they saying you suck?
Yeah.
I'm probably that.
It's my wife that's not in on the joke.
Oh man. So I have some amazing questions here, and then we're gonna try to get through them and have some time for folks to give you some questions. But first, how you doing?
Good. I'm doing great.
Feeling good?
Yeah, the flight was easy today.
Good.
Here, no problem.
Excellent. Glad to hear. Physically, you feeling good? What's good? You know, like
Yeah,
at this.
I just had back surgery. I have a shoulder replacement coming up.
Wow.
And I have to have my neck surgery next year. So
Oh
I
man.
have a lot of surgeries.
Is that gonna kind of keep you out of signings and things for a little bit?
Not really. It shouldn't affect me, I don't think.
Okay. All right. Well, let's get started. I have some really good questions that we're getting today. First one. After winning gold in the '96 Olympics, you were quick to state that you had a broken freaking neck. No, that you had no interest in joining the WWE. This was something you said several times. So, if you could talk about the thought process that kind of leads to you eventually changing your mind, and what I thought would have kept your mind made up, the infamous ECW incident. So how, despite not wanting to go to WWE, and despite the craziness of that ECW moment, how? Like, where's the thought process that brought you to WWE?
Well, I grew up, I watched some wrestling when I was younger, but no San Martino in particular. But my brothers were all amateur wrestlers. Amateur wrestling's always taken the backseat to pro wrestling. And so my brothers were always telling me, don't watch that fake crap, you're the real deal. And so I tried to stay away from it, and I did. I knew like who Hulk Hogan was and Macho Man because they were mainstream.
Oh yeah.
But I didn't follow wrestling. And in 1996, the WWE offered me a contract. It was a multi-million-dollar deal. I didn't have any money, so it looked good to me. And I brought it back to my agent, who happened to be a former amateur wrestler. And he said, "You're not going to get this crap." He threw it in the trash. I was like, "No, it's millions of dollars." He said, "I'll get you a job. Don't worry." And he ended up giving me a job to be a commentator for Fox in Pittsburgh. And I did that for about a year, and it wasn't very good. And I just decided to start watching wrestling because when Vince McMahon stated in 1998, he said, "We're not really a sport, we're sports entertainment." So he came out of the closet, and that gave me the ability to say to my brothers, "Hey, this isn't the real deal. They're
It's
not
entertainment."
claiming, we don't have to take the back seat to them anymore." So it was clever that Vince did that, and I think that a lot of people felt that if kayfabe was over, the business would be ruined. It wasn't. It actually exploded.
Yeah.
So admitting that it was fake was actually a great idea. So when that happened, that gave me the avenue to sign with the WWE. And the problem was when I called the WWE in 1998, I started watching Raw, and I was like, wow, these guys are great athletes, they're entertaining, and I fell in love with Stone Cold Steve Austin. And so I called the WWE and I said, "Hey, is that contract still there?" They said, "Nope." Yeah, you can come up and try out if you want to.
Oh wow! So they were just ready to give you guaranteed money without a tryout.
Yeah.
Just
and I think that the ECW thing tainted me back in 1996, and that was part of the reason why I didn't sign for WWE. And then some of you don't know, ECW had a show where Sandman got crucified by Raven on a cross, and I was like, "Oh shit!"
yeah.
I was a little bit like, okay, this is a TV show. I'm going to be on the same show as this, and I'm an Olympic gold medalist, and little kids look up to me, and I didn't really understand the entertainment factor. I just thought they were being assholes, and realizing down the line, okay, I get why they did that. But, you know, seeing that turned me off. And that's probably why, one of the main reasons why I decided not to sign with the WWE back in 1996. But what's crazy is, when I signed with them in 1998, I've tried out. First day, I picked up on everything so quickly, they offered me a contract. But it wasn't that good. it was $50,000.
Oh, wow.
And the crazy thing is, when you're traveling 250 days a year, the WWE only covers your airfare. They don't cover your hotel, your rental car, your food, your tolls, your gas, and I'm only making 50 grand. So it was kind of like, I can't provide for my family, you know? So the cool thing was, I was able to get on TV relatively quickly. And the thing is, no matter what your guarantee is, if you're utilized and you keep making your way up the ranks, you make more money regardless of what your guarantee is. So my first year wrestling, I had a $50,000 guarantee, but by the end of the year, I made over $1 million. So it was a pretty good first year. And so, you know, I didn't have to suffer as much as I thought I would.
So it's a merit-based type system. Like, all right, if you see you're working hard, you're doing well, you
You
will climb up. And you climbed up.
The main event, you get paid the most.
You climbed up very quickly. And a lot of people, like, it's almost like legendary, that talks of how quickly you adapted.
I picked up on it relatively quickly, but when I focus on something, I get really OCD about it. And I did that with the WWE just like I did in amateur wrestling. So it wasn't a problem for me to be able to pick up on it pretty quickly. But, you know, it is a tough business to understand the psychology involved and the brutal schedule they have, and going in the ring and bumping around 30 times every night, you know, puts your body in, you know, a heck of a predicament where it's going to break down eventually. And, obviously, you guys know mine broke down quite a bit in my career.
Yeah. Well, we are glad you made it through, and continue to make it through. All right, here's a good one. One of the more famous or infamous stories in pro wrestling has been probably the plane ride from hell. So speaking of getting picked up and slammed around, there's multiple names involved in this story. If you haven't seen the Dark Side of the Ring or anything like that, there's plenty of folks. But that's not the only crazy plane ride. Apparently, there's one that involves a story with you and Vince McMahon.
Yeah.
You want to tell us about that one?
I heard this one. I was in the back of the plane. I always try to stay as far away from Vince as possible.
Because it's a private, smaller...
It's a private plane.
Okay.
It's actually a pretty big plane.
Big plane, okay.
And Vince always drinks wine after the show's over. He gets a little crazy when he drinks. So I stayed way in the back. But Vince was feeling frisky that night. And if you don't know Vince McMahon, he's the kind of guy that if you're Mike Tyson, he wants to feel what it feels like to get knocked out by Mike Tyson. Like, he'll literally say, "Mike, punch me in the face. I want to feel it." You know. And so that night he was feeling like he wanted to see how it would be to wrestle an Olympic gold medalist. So
for the record, does Vince have any amateur wrestling training?
No. He says he does, but he's full of shit. So we're on the plane, and for some reason Vince thinks I'm like this womanizer. So like he would have a girl go back and tell me, "Hey, Kirk, come with me. I need to talk to you for a second." And I'd get up and I'd follow her, and Vince would jump out of the bathroom and jump on me. And then I would reverse him, get him down. I would pin him. I'd say, "Are we good?" And he's like, "Yeah, we're good." So I go back down and I go back to sleep. And he did this like for 7 hours, nonstop. And the crazy thing is, when we were landing the plane. Oh, by the way, one point in time, we were near the latch, the door. Okay, and we're bumping into the latch, and the latch is going up, and the flight attendant's like, "Oh my God!" She goes and tells the pilot. So the pilot gets on the speaker and he says, "If you don't stop what you're doing, we're gonna land this plane right now." And Vince goes, "Hey pilot, you can fuck yourself. I'll buy the fucking plane." We just kept wrestling, and when we were landing the plane. I thought it was all over with and done. And as we're landing, Chris Jericho's sitting in front of me, and he looks down the aisle, He says, Angle, look down the aisle. And I look down the aisle, and Vince is army crawling to get to be the wrestler, jump on me and wrestle me while the plane is landing. So it was the craziest 7 hours of my life, and I will never forget it. That's for sure.
That's insane. I'm just imagining Vince McMahon army crawling down the
While the plane's landing.
while it's landing. My goodness. So being the first was it most celebrated real athlete in the world, I would imagine, maybe was Vince the only person who kind of would not try you, but just maybe like make some comments like, oh, I bet I could take you. Did you have that?
But I had an incident where Brock Lesnar said the same thing.
Oh my.
And,
How'd that go?
well, he is a great wrestler. He's an NCAA champion, and he's a big boy. I mean, he was probably at this point in time. This is right before he got into the WWE. He was at OVW training, and he came up to TV that week, and they just started him. And he probably was about 310 or 320. And someone came up to him and said, "Hey, how do you think you do against Angle?" He said, "I kill him." He said he's too small. So this person came to me and told me that. So I went to Brock and I said, "Hey, Brock, by the way, I'm Kurt Angle." He says, "I know you are." I said, "Well, I heard you said you could take me in a wrestling match." He said, "I would." I said, "Well, let's go right now." He says, "No, I have sandals on." I took my shoes off. I said, "Let's go barefoot." And he's like, nah. So I let it go for that week. And the following week, he was in the ring and he was kind of showing off. He was wrestling Big Show, and they were wrestling for real. And Big Show weighed about 540 at the time. And Brock was picking him up and slamming him. Big Show was actually competing against Brock. He wasn't helping Brock. And I was like, holy crap, this guy might be able to kick my ass. How strong and powerful he was unbelievable. And I was like, if anybody could pick up a 540-pound man that easily, he's a beast. So Big Show was facing me. Brock's back was to me. And Big Show was on the other side. They were in the ring wrestling. I went up on top of the ring, or to get up on the side of it, and I said, "Big Show, get out." And he said, "Okay." He got out, and I walked up to Brock and tapped him on the back. I said, "It's time to go." He was like, "Oh shit." So we went, but you know what? The rumors were, all the wrestlers say I crushed him and I dominated him, and that's all bull crap. We wrestled for 15 minutes. I took him down twice. He didn't take me down at all, but it was a tight match. But I did beat him. But when stories get out, they get fabricated and people want to go over the top and say Kurt kicked the crap out of him. Brock had to go to the hospital. I heard rumors like that. So it's just crazy how things get so out of hand.
The stories just get more, spectacular.
Without a doubt.
All right, so I got a good statistic. A lot of people aren't aware that you are, and correct me if I'm wrong, you are the only wrestler to tap out Hulk Hogan.
Yeah.
This is the only time that he's ever tapped out. What's to you? So how did this idea come about? Like, was this talked about beforehand, where maybe he's like, "Hey, brother, I've never,
Why do you got all these good questions?
I don't know, man. I watch a lot of wrestling.
And they're all like really, what's it called when it's,
they're hard-hitting, thought-provoking.
Yes. Well, put it this way. Vince McMahon came to me the day that I was going to wrestle Hulk Hogan. We were at the pay-per-view, and Vince has an office in the building, and he said, "Kurt, I want you to come to my office." So I go in, and he says, "Listen," he has two seats facing each other, like you and me, okay? But you can barely, like, both knees were almost touching, so you were close together.
Wow.
And Vince had a chair here for him. He wanted me and Hogan to face each other. And he sits me down in this chair before Hulk Hogan comes in. And he says, "Listen, I need to talk to you. Listen, I want you to win tonight by tap out. But I know if I tell Hogan, he's going to talk me out of it." And Vince is a sucker, Hogan tells him I don't want to tap out, and Vince will say okay. So he didn't want Hogan to approach him. So I'm sitting down, and Hogan comes in, and what Vince told me to do was he wanted me to scare Hogan. Okay, and I was like, "This is freaking Hulk
Scare him.
Yeah, so
Just like get in his face and be like,
yeah.
just
So
scare
so
him.
we were sitting facing each other, knees were barely touching, and Vince wanted me to get up and get in his face. Yes. Nose to nose, almost touching his nose. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, I can't believe I'm doing this with Hulk freaking Hogan. And Vince says to Hogan, hey, Hogan, Kurt's going to go over tonight by tap. Hogan looks at me and goes, okay. I couldn't believe it. I was like, I know I'm a badass, but damn, it's Hulk Hogan. You know?
That's it. Wow. So you didn't even have to say it. It was
No,
saying
I got in Hogan's
just
face,
the look.
and yeah, it was crazy. Crazy the stuff Vince had me do.
No, like, oh, it's not gonna work for me, bro. None of that. It was just
okay.
all right.
That's awesome.
Wow, that is amazing. All right, I'm glad I asked that. All right, your comedic timing and I think willingness to entertain has shined almost as much as your wrestling ability. I think over the years, people are like, man, like this guy's just such a natural, like hitting the funny beats and making things work, like. So really, especially the stuff with Stone Cold, we always, go back to a lot of that stuff, the little tiny hat, guitar, all that cool stuff.
That was Austin's idea, by the way.
Oh, really?
The
The
cutaway.
cutaway.
He saw it in the airport. He's like, that was a great old angle. It's a little tiny one. He had big cowboy.
He had the big one, you get the little one. So just how was it working with Austin on these skits? Like, how's that working out?
You know what? We had so much fun. We got to the point where Vince was like, listen, if anyone laughs while we do this, before I yell cut, you're gonna get fined $2,000. So, because we were, and the crazy thing is, we didn't have anything written. It was just an idea. Okay, let's do this. Kurt, you start. Steve, you chime in. Then Vince will chime in, and we'll make this thing work. I didn't know how to improvise, because when I started in WWE, I had a writer that wrote me down everything word for word. So I learned how to improvise with Austin and Vince. But it was crazy because we had so much fun doing that. And the thing is, like, we would do a pre-tape, and right when it would be over and they'd yell cut, everybody just started busting up. And we just had a lot of fun doing that. But I didn't know, like, I didn't have a funny personality. I wasn't like an entertaining person. I didn't even know if I could do it. And it was just Vince giving me the ability to be a certain character he wanted me to be. And I think it was because it's a little bit of who I am.
Yeah.
I'm a little airheaded, gullible, I'm kind of a little nerdy, I do love milk, and I do go by the three eyes.
You do. Okay.
So Vince nailed it on the head, and the writer, Brian Gewirtz, was so incredible. He came up with all this funny stuff, and I never was funny. I didn't even have a funny personality, but I was just doing what they told me to do, and it was working.
Yeah.
And I was getting better and better every week. When WWE had me start out, I wasn't good. They didn't teach me how to cut a promo. They didn't teach me how to act. They taught me wrestling for about 7 months, and then they threw me on TV and said, either sink or swim.
Wow.
And it was my choice.
Was this just the way things were back then? Like they didn't have like maybe.
Well, they didn't have NXT or anything like that. So back then they had the Dory Funk Dojo, where Dory Funk would train the wrestlers that would just sign with WWE, and they would only do it for 5 days a month.
Okay.
So it wasn't a lot of training. And here I am, I'm sitting at home. The other 25 days, like, what am I going to do? I need to get more wrestling.
Wow.
So I called the WWE and I told them, listen, I need more training.
Yeah.
So they sent me down to Memphis. I went down there for a few months and got myself a little better. But they still, in Memphis, I was always opening card. So I never had promos, none of that stuff. So when Vince started me on TV, the first night on the air, it was in my hometown of Pittsburgh. This is after I debuted on the pay-per-view Survivor Series. The next day, I was in my hometown of Pittsburgh. And Vince comes up to me and he says, all right, listen, this is what you're going to say tonight. I'm like, you're not going to write it down? Because I'm used to reading from the script. He's like, no, I'm going to tell you what to say and you're going to say it. I said, oh, shit. So he starts talking. He's talking. 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 4 minutes. And I'm not listening to a word he says because I'm like, holy shit, he's saying a lot of stuff. He gets done after 5 minutes and he goes, so you got it? I said, Vince, I didn't hear a word you said. You have to say it again.
I don't got it.
Again. So I went out there and I got about 80% of it right. It wasn't great, but it wasn't bad. And Vince was like, I think I have something. You know, he thought he knew he had something in me that if I was able to remember that stuff that he was giving, handing me, because he told me a lot of stuff. But he was like, okay, this guy has something. So every week, he was always dishing me promos and working on my skills. And while I'm on the job, so I'm on TV, on Raw and SmackDown, doing this stuff while I'm training on the job. So I was getting better and better, and it just, it just came to me. And when they started wanting me to do the funny stuff, it just worked. But I had a great writer, Ryan Wertz, wrote incredible stuff.
Yeah, I read his book. His book's really great. He says that working during that era was so much fun because literally, he said Stone Cold would show up and he'd come into the writer's room and be like, I'm supposed to raise hell tonight. Like, how am I raising hell tonight? What am I doing? What am I doing? Just tell me how I'm raising hell, and then I'm out of here to get started on that, And that was just like the show was built around that. It's like, all right, now how can he cause havoc?
Yeah. If you didn't notice, when the Alliance whole thing took over, Steve was the head of the show. When Steve was on, he was the man, and they gave me an opportunity to be up there with Steve, and we together started dominating, I guess, the WWE. Because Steve and I had a program together, we wrestled, then we were on the Alliance together, then we did the funny stuff together. So we had a lot of fun together, but Steve taught me a lot. I learned a lot from him, especially in the wrestling ring. He is one of the best in-ring generals I've ever been in the ring with. In other words, what I'm saying is, whatever we have planned out, he'll change it in the middle of the match, he'll go to something else, and then he'll come right back to it. Like, he just has this ability to improvise better than anybody else. And he's one of those guys that could call the whole match in the ring. You don't even have to talk about it backstage. There are very few people. Undertaker, I couldn't do that. I could do half of the match, but Undertaker could do it, Triple H could do it, and Stone Cold Steve Austin. Those three were incredible in-ring generals.
Wow. So that leads me to, as you were going through it, I was like, oh yeah, that's one of my questions. We're talking about scripted versus unscripted promos. What do you prefer? What is some, you like scripted? Yeah. They're like, no. So I clearly got that.
I'll tell you this, and the writers and everybody in the Gorilla, Vince McMahon, all the people that were running the show. Okay, the Gorilla is the backstage part where you come out, where the entrance is. You come out to the arena, and what they would do is they would bet on if I was able to read my promo word for word on the script. Because I would do it almost every time, word for word. So I didn't do bullet points. I studied every single word. And even the promo, I did a promo one time. It was 3 pages typed, and it was about China, and I nailed that word for word.
Word for
3
word.
pages. So I just have an incredible memory, and but I started to lose it, especially during the pandemic. And I think I got brain fog pretty badly. My memory, I got lost there for a while, but I started to gain it back.
Yeah, we all did. I feel like we all lost a year plus. I'm a former school teacher, and all my friends who teach school are like, yeah, that year's a wash. Like, we were just trying to keep kids in front of their computers and not, playing Candy Crush or whatever. So, yeah, it was a tough time. All right, so we talked about comedy. This one's a little funny, but if you were to come up with a 4th eye, what would that be? They were like, we need the 4th eye. We need to fit it on a t-shirt. We need a 4th one. Let's go.
I don't know.
I think you nail it all in the 3 eyes, though. So
Incredible.
hey, okay. That's good. That's good. All right. So we'll go back a little bit. When you went to college at Clarion, what would say, what were some of the decisions that went into you making that move to Clarion when I'm sure there were other powerhouses in wrestling? I know Iowa, Dan Gable, things were going on like that.
Iowa and Dan Gable didn't want me.
Really?
Yeah,
Huh.
yeah. That was their mistake.
Okay, no, they're nice. Wow.
Well, remember when I was in high school, I was a late bloomer. I didn't start really wrestling until I was in 8th grade. I broke my arm in 7th grade. I missed that year. So I started in 8th grade, and I wasn't that good. And what happened was, my freshman year in high school, my father died in a construction accident. And he was our biggest fan. He never missed any of our sporting events. He showed up, even if he had to leave work early, he was there. And so I dedicated my athletic career to my father. When I did that, I started getting more focused on my tournament. And I started setting goals for myself. And by my senior year, I won a state championship in wrestling. But winning one state title in wrestling will not get you recruited by Iowa or Oklahoma State or Penn State. You know, you could get like, you know, Pitt or North Carolina, those kind of schools. But the really big powerhouses, they wanted you if you were a 3 or 4 timer. You know, you had to win 4 state titles. So they passed on me, but I ended up going to Clarion because my family and I were so close. I wanted them to go to all of my wrestling events, and Clarion was only an hour and a half outside of Pittsburgh.
Gotcha.
And the year before I went to Clarion, they had their best year yet. They beat Oklahoma State. They beat Penn State. They were 18-0 dual meets. And they had 9 guys that were supposed to be All-Americans out of 10 weight classes. And they even had 2 returning All-Americans on that team. When they went to the Nationals, it was the worst performance they ever did. None of them placed.
Really?
Yeah, it was really bad. But they you know, they got on the map because of the attention they got, because they were so damn good. And so that kind of rose my attention, like, okay, there's a school close to me that's a really good wrestling school. And the crazy thing is I committed to Pitt during my senior year. And Clary kept calling me, and I'm like, listen guys, I already committed to Pitt, just leave me alone. And they're like, well, just come up for a visit, just see if you like it. I go up there, and Clarion's a small town, 3,000 people. And the students, there's only 4,000 students at the school. And I went to this dual meet, and it was ironically against Pitt. So, you know, the Pitt coach was like, you know, at the dual meet, he's like, coming here, right? I'm like, yeah, I'm coming. So, but when I walked in the arena, there were 4,000 people there. It wasn't an arena, it was a little gym. It was standing room only, 4,000 people. And there was a rock band behind the wrestlers playing rock music. It was crazy. I was like, I'm coming here. I didn't even care about the education. I was like, this is my place.
This is amazing.
Yeah, and you know what? I'm glad I did, because it was the right move.
Yeah. That's kind of what got me at Penn State, is they were undefeated in football the year before. I was like, all right, well, I guess I'm going there. Sometimes it just takes that bit of like the pageantry to be like, all right, I feel good here.
It draws attention, and you're like, oh, this is the place to go.
Yeah. All right, do you have a fond memory or any memories of at Foxcatcher?
Well, you know what? I had a lot of memories of Foxcatcher. Some of you don't know what Foxcatcher is. It was a wrestling club in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. It was owned by a billionaire. His name is John DuPont. And the national story, there was a movie and a documentary about it. He shot and killed the Olympic coach, Dave Schultz, my Olympic coach. And this was about 6 months before the Olympics. And John would do some crazy stuff. I mean, one time he rented I don't know how he got it, a tank. And he started driving over all his houses on his farm, just wrecking them, just driving all over them. And, you know, there was one time that he thought he was an airline pilot, and he drove his car down a hill, and the road goes to the left, but he went straight into the lake. And his car sunk in the lake. He got out in time that he saved his own life. But then he did it again the next day, and people were like, oh my God, this guy has to be crazy. So there was one point in time where John DuPont, I was at his mansion. It was right next to the facility that we trained at. And I was in his mansion, I was in his trophy room, me and a guy named Rob Calabrese. And John DuPont was taking drugs, and he was getting really what's it called when you get paranoid. I was getting really paranoid about people being in his falls,